There are a number of themes that run through the book. And to me, one of the most important ones is called The Hero's Journey. And The Hero's Journey is a book by Joseph Campbell. I encourage all men to think of themselves as the hero of their own journey. Like I'm looking at behind you and there's a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? I mean, Arnold's an amazing guy and he's almost a billionaire and he was governor of California. He's got his own problems. He's not a hero. He's a hero of his own life. But you got to be a hero of your own life.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back, guys, to another amazing and very, very exciting episode of the Superman Life. As always, I'm your host, Frank Rich, and I just want to start off by letting you guys know how incredibly grateful and thankful I am to have you here with me today. Guys, what a amazing guest we have here, a true expert in his field of work, a true expert in the world of optimizing manhood. And truthfully, guys, I'm gonna apologize to some of you. You guys have been around. There's many of you listeners that have been here with us for 106 episodes. And as a show that is dedicated to helping men, a show that is dedicated to helping you men out there optimize your health, optimize your life, optimize your performance, optimize your intimacy, optimize your relationship, I almost feel like I've let you down because I haven't had an expert on of this field. But we joked about it in the conversation, which you guys will hear. Maybe it's because we had to wait to get today's guest on. So maybe it took us 106 episodes to find him. And if that was the case, guys, then I think then we landed this conversation at the absolute right time. But today, guys, we're diving into some real conversation around men's health, around men's performance, sexual performance, erectile performance. So we're going to address an ED. We're going to be addressing penises and penile performance. So I have with me here today Dr. Judson Brandeis. Dr. Judson Brandeis is a board-certified urologist, surgeon, medical research, and physician educator. Over his 25-year career, he has performed thousands of surgeries and pioneered surgical robotics. He was voted by his colleagues as a top urologist in the San Francisco Bay Area from 2014 to 2020 and was the chief of urology at Muir Hospital and Hill Physicians for the past 8 years. Now, Dr. Brandeis attended Brown University, received his MD at Vanderbilt, received the Howard Hughes Award for his research at Harvard Medical School, and completed a 6-year surgery urology residency at UCLA. Yes, the man is brilliant. He's obviously attended some of the leading institutions here in the United States. Now, Dr. Brandeis has dedicated the second half of his career to optimizing manhood, helping men feel great, look good, and have better physical intimacy so they can leave a legacy. Brandeis MD engages in clinical research to improve men's quality of life and provide his patients and men everywhere the tools to live their best life. Now, Dr. Brandeis attends the sexual medicine and urology meetings to bring back the latest treatments for his patients. As the director of sexual medicine at the Aesthetics Show and the author sexual medicine chapters for textbooks, he educates other physicians. Now, he's also the author of the brand new book called The 21st Century Man, which we spend a lot of our time here today addressing. But we get into, like I said, we get into erectile dysfunction. What is it? Like, do we actually understand what true erectile dysfunction is? So I have him define it, and then we talk about some of the early warning signs and some of the early symptoms. And is ED something that every guy is going to experience in his life? So we kind of share some statistics. And then for you younger men out there, they're like, oh, this is not an issue with me. I'm healthy. We talk about why you need to start paying attention to the things that you're doing today to set yourself up for success in the future. And then we get into, is ED only a physical thing? Like, is it only due to physical circumstances? There's a psychological component to it as well. But then we get into muscle building. And then at one point, the conversation takes this wild turn down into discussing the hero's journey, which all of you guys love. All of you guys know me, know that I love to kind of take these conversations all over the place. As somebody that has studied Joseph Campbell's work and is a massive fan of the hero's journey, you are going to want to stick around for that part of the conversation. But guys, there's so much that we get into. There's so much that we left out of today's conversation. But I hope the 60 plus minutes that you get to spend with us today is meaningful and valuable for you guys. So without further ado, guys, let's get into today's conversation. Optimizing manhood in the 21st century man with none other than Dr. Judson Brandeis. Hope you guys enjoy. Dr. Brandeis, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Oh, thank you, Frank. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. After just this 5 minute kind of, pre-entry conversation that we had, it's kind of like unlocked all these kind of different things. Anybody that's been around here for a while knows that these podcasts are really conversational. So we're just gonna kind of dive in, man. And I think there's an infinite amount of ways that we're gonna be able to go today. But I'm really looking forward to kind of diving in. It's like I was telling you, I'm a little disappointed in myself. The fact that we have a podcast that is specifically dedicated to optimizing men's health or specifically helping men kind of, find breakthroughs in their own life and become the best version of themselves or become the man that they were created to be, which is like the terminology that I like to use. It's like, why haven't I had an expert in your area on yet? So not to me first.
There you go. Today's the day.
Yeah, we have one of the world's best. So maybe that's what it was. It took us 107 episodes to find the best in the world. So guys, today we have Dr. Judson Brandeis. You guys heard that from the intro. He's one of the leading experts in the world of urology. Would that be the proper way of describing you?
Yeah. So, I am a urologist, board certified urologist. I've done all really cool stuff in urology. I pioneered surgical robotics, pioneered using MRIs to diagnose and biopsy prostate cancer. But about 3 years ago, I became really interested in regenerative medicine in sexual function, in gains wave or acoustic wave therapy, in using PRP, in helping men who could no longer get erections, be able to achieve erections and physical intimacy once again. And that kind of led me to kind of a more general study of men's health, because really, when you're 20, getting an erection and having sex is no big deal. But when you're in your 50s or 60s or 70s, things have to be going well in your life, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, in order for you to have frequent intimacy with your partner. And that's what I saw, was men that came in the office in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s that no longer were able to connect with their spouse. And I really wanted to help them.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good starting point here is let's address it. It's a conversation that all men need to have. And I don't know if all of them are comfortable, talking about these things, but here we are. So we're gonna dive right in and talk about
You better get comfortable talking about it, because I like talking about it all the time.
Yeah. So let's talk about ED. Let's talk about erectile dysfunction and why it's something that we need to understand, we need to be aware of, and we need to constantly be checking on. But maybe a starting point here, Dr. Brandeis, is let's define erectile dysfunction, because I think everybody's kind of got their own idea of maybe what it is and their own experience with it. But let's get the definition out there so we kind of know what it is we're actually going to be talking about here.
Great. So really, to me, it's the ability to have penetrative intercourse. So I have men in their 60s or 70s and 80s that have great sex lives, but are unable to have penetrative intercourse. So obviously there are other ways to pleasure your spouse than to stick your penis in their vagina. Okay, but that's a big thing for guys. And it's a function of blood flow. Okay. And 80 to 90% of erectile dysfunction is a problem with not enough blood flow, not enough blood pressure into the penis. Okay. And the penis and the toes are on the periphery of the circulation. Okay. But the toes are different than the penis because you don't get toe erections. The blood flow goes into the toes and then it comes out. And if you have a lower blood pressure in the toes, then you get cold feet and you put socks on and you're fine. But the penis is different, right? The penis either works or it doesn't work. And if the blood pressure to the penis is not adequate, then you don't get an erection. If you don't get an erection, you can't have penetration. Okay, the artery to the penis, called the deep cavernosal artery, is in the middle of the penis. And arteries have muscular walls, so they pump blood into the penis. Now, the return of blood in the penis is on the periphery or the outside of the penis. So as the penis fills up with blood, it blocks the exit of venous blood. But your artery is still pumping blood into the penis, so you get that rigidity. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So you have to be able to achieve a certain level of blood pressure in the penis in order to maintain an erection. So it's like if you're standing on a burning building and there's another building 6 feet away. If you jump 6 feet, you made it. It's a good day. If you jump 5 feet, it's a long way down. So if the blood pressure that you need in the penis is 100 and you achieve 100 or 105, it's a good night. But if you're only able to achieve 95, that night's going to end up in frustration. And so really the key to addressing erectile function is to get enough blood pressure in the penis so you can block the exit of venous blood.
Got it. So what percentage of men are suffering or struggling with ED?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there was a study called the Massachusetts Male Aging Study. It's the largest study of men aging ever done in the United States. And what they found is 40% of men in their 40s, 50% of men in their 50s, 60% of men in their 60s, 70% of men in their 70s have some degree of erectile dysfunction, whether it's mild, moderate, or severe. Obviously, as the more you age, the more severe it tends to get.
And these are old, these are, I don't want to say older men, but they're men in the 40s. So we're gonna have men that are going to hear this that are in their 20s. And as we were discussing, before hit record, like I'm very niche and narrow in the men that I serve, with our company and the coaching that we do. We obviously have a broad audience that listens to the podcast, but I'm having conversations with the men on a weekly basis now that are in their 20s that are struggling with this. And so I guess where I want to go with this is what is the impact physically, or what are the causes physically? Obviously there's an age component to it, but then is there a psychological component? And if so, how do those things kind of differ? Because I'm assuming the reasons why the guys in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are struggling with are not the same reason why a guy in his 20s is having issues with erectile dysfunction.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's half psychological and half physiological, but I don't like the word psychological because people think, well, I'm crazy if I'm not having good erections. But I really, and the 21st Century Man, the book really focuses on what's under the hood. What are the physiology and the neurotransmitters? Those are big words, but we make it really simple for you, that underlie psychogenic erectile dysfunction, okay? And it has to do with the nerve system. So you have what's called the sympathetic nervous system, that's the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxation nervous system. So, for example, if you're being chased by a bear, do you get an erection? No, of course not, right? It gives the bear something to grab onto. Okay, so when you're being chased by a bear, you have adrenaline or epinephrine that's being released. And what that does is it constricts blood flow to non-essential organs, to the penis, to the intestines, to the kidneys, to the digestive tract, and it focuses that blood flow on big muscles, the heart, the eyes, parts of the brain, right? So that you can escape the bear. And so we only have one stress system, whether that stress is being run away from a bear or work stress or marital stress or, whatever kind of stress you have, it's going to produce adrenaline or epinephrine. And that's going to shunt blood away from there are certain parts of the body. For example, like if you go up to a girl and you're super nervous about talking to the girl, right? Sometimes you're like, you can't even think of the words to say, right? How come? Because you're generating a stress response. That blood flow is going to certain parts of your body, but it's not going to the cerebral cortex, which is the part of the body that controls conversation and logic and saying really smart things. So you freeze up because the blood flow is not going to the place where you want it to go. And so that's really psychogenic erectile dysfunction. It's not that you're crazy. It's that you're stressed and the stress response is diverting blood away from the place that you need it.
Got it. That makes so much sense. And I just want to kind of, maybe share my perspective. And once again, I see everything now through the lens of an addiction recovery coach. Like, and it's just due to, this is what I spend my life in 60 hours a week having conversations around. So a very unique perspective on things, but bringing this back to, the guys that I'm having conversation with, I know there's going to be a large amount of them that are in that age. It's like, I get the question all the time. Well, Frank, how long, if I go 90 days without pornography, like, does that mean that my ED is going to get fixed? And like, I've never been able to really answer that question. I think what you're saying, it's like, it's not just removing it. It's like, you gotta get to what the addiction has done, which is raised your stress, raised your anxiety, and solve those issues. And if you don't solve those, then you'll be somebody that's not watching porn, but also is not able to get an erect penis.
Yeah. So there's actually a chapter on pornography in the book. And I'm sure you know a lot more about these issues than I do, but my perspective is that it is one of the things it does is it desensitizes men. So your men get turned on 3 different ways: through sensation, right? If somebody touches you in the right place, through fantasy, imagination, or through visual. And a lot of men, it's visual, and pornography is pretty much purely visual.
100%.
And so, on day one, you're just watching a guy and a girl. And then day 7, you're watching a guy and 2 girls. And then day 30, you're watching a guy and 12 girls. And then day 60, you're watching a guy, 2 zebras and a chimpanzee. It takes
Mhm.
more to stimulate the visual centers to produce that chemical charge that results in blood flow going to the penis.
Now, what is that doing at the same time? If obviously it's desensitizing that, but what is that doing to the other two ways of being aroused? Like, is it atrophying that as well, to where even like a physical touch won't have the same effect?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I'll have to look that up, whether anyone's researched that.
Yeah, no, that's a great response. I appreciate that. But what you described there is known as the desensitization sensitization effect, and it's across the board in all addictions. I mean, somebody that does coke for the first time, they reach this point and they'll never get to that point again, but they're going to go deeper and deeper and always be chasing it. And it's one of the things I talk about, like with young men or people that are just in the early stages of catching their behavior. It's like, you need to get in front of this thing now, because there's no telling where it's going to lead to. It's going to get to the point where even the visual stuff on the screen is no longer going to do it. And then that will open up a whole different conversation that won't make sense for us to get in here today. Let's get into the book here a little bit, because you mentioned it a few times here in the first couple minutes. And I know it's a big passion project that you've taken on here recently. So, as one of the things you said to me here at the beginning, not a lot of doctors are great writers. So what was the inspiration for even writing the book?
Yeah, so I've been a urologist for 25 years, and I've seen thousands and thousands of men come through my office, and I just get really fired up about helping men, not just sexually, not just in urology, but in all aspects of life. I'm just very interested in health and how to stay healthy, and then when COVID hit, all of a sudden it opened up a lot of time for me. So I had to close my office for 2 months. And I'm not one of those people that just kind of sits around and watches TV and that kind of stuff. And so I just decided I would write a book. And so it started out as a book basically about sexual medicine, and the sexual medicine, sexual function chapters in this book are, I'm biased obviously, but they're by far and away the best that ever been written, and in the most complete. Not only do we have stuff about erections and erectile dysfunction, but we also have stuff about shockwave therapy for erectile dysfunction, PRP, stem cells. We have the most amazing chapter written by Susan Bratton on how to make love to a woman. We have stuff about lubes. We have stuff about sex toys. We have stuff about alternative medicines like PT-141 and oxytocin and apomorphine. We have stuff about Peyronie's disease, penis pumps, penile implants, all written by some of the top experts in the field. And so it's just really amazing. But I see men's health through the lens of erectile dysfunction. So that if you're in your 50s and 60s, things have to be going right for you to be able to get good erections. And so, for example, sleep, right? If you don't get good sleep, then you're not in REM sleep enough, in which case you're not getting good nighttime erections. And so I see men who have sleep apnea with erectile dysfunction. That's not something people typically think of. Or men with hypertension, or men with diabetes, or men with all these different problems. If you don't manage the underlying problem, then you're not going to be able to manage the erectile dysfunction. And even I go as far as managing the spouse. So I remember I had a 68-year-old patient who couldn't get an erection. We worked really hard. We got him to the point where he was able to have penetrative intercourse. He went home, he had sex with his wife. He came back 2 weeks later with a kind of a sad face. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, well, my wife is postmenopausal. And so I was able to have penetrative intercourse with her, but it was painful. And she had bleeding afterwards. So not only do I have to manage the patients, I have to manage their spouses. I started giving away Uberlube, which is a silicone-based lubricant, and learned a lot about menopause and about replacing estrogen in women.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I really, 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 I really love your view and perspective, because I gotta imagine that there's a lot of board certified urologists or doctors in your field that if a guy comes and he's like, I got erectile dysfunction, like they're going to solve that problem. Like you're saying, like if you just put a Band-Aid on something and you don't address the root cause, you don't address the sleep, you don't address the high blood pressure, you don't address the stress in his life, you don't address the relationship issues that he's having, there's going to be a miserable guy with a stiff penis. Like what good is that?
So yeah, that's exactly, you're 100% right. That's why we talk in the book about feeling good, looking good, and having good sex. Because if guys don't feel like they look good and they don't feel good, then they're not going to want to have sex. And that kind of brings me to another thing is that, I had a very successful urology practice. I've been voted the top urologist in the San Francisco Bay Area 7 years in a row. But it was an insurance-based medicine practice. And I got to the point where I just couldn't provide the level of care to my patients with an insurance-based model. On average, you spend 16 minutes and 14 seconds with the doctor. That's a Cerner study looking at 100 million charts. And it's just not adequate to properly take care of men with erectile dysfunction. I mean, it takes me 15, 20 minutes even just to get guys to open up, to talk about the really important issues. I remember I had a patient and I have an office that's totally masculine. I mean, we have hardwoods and I play rock and roll music and I have an Eric Clapton guitar on the wall and a Muhammad Ali boxing glove on the wall and a Peyton Manning, Eli Manning signed football on, it's a very kind of comforting, soothing environment for guys, but still they don't open up. And it's really important to open up to someone who can help you. And this patient, we were talking back and forth and I said to him after 20 minutes, I said, there's something that just doesn't make sense. I can't figure you out. And he looked at me and tears started welling up in his eyes. And he said, for 15 years, I was a meth addict. And then all of a sudden things sort of made sense. And I was able to help in a really significant way. But until he was comfortable enough talking to me and I sort of challenged him and said, you're not telling me something's not adding up. I wasn't able to help him in a way that was really adequate. And so there's a section in the book on being a partner with your doctor, right? The 21st century man has a formula for you got 16 minutes and 14 seconds. And when you go to the doctor, and men are half as likely to go to the doctor as women. That's just pure statistics, right? And men...
What do you mean by that? They're half as likely to go to a doctor?
Men make half the visits to the primary cares that women do.
Oh, so they visit half as frequently.
Half as frequently, right?
Got it. Okay.
And then you spend 5 minutes talking about the weather and about football, and then you don't really get to why you're there. By the time the doctor gets around to talking to you about why you're there, it's time to go.
Yeah.
You got, a lot of doctors these days are in systems like Kaiser or Geisinger or Mayo or whatever. And you're monitored. You got 16 minutes to see the patients and do a whole bunch of paperwork on the electronic medical record system. And if you fall behind, you end up doing paperwork till midnight.
Mm.
So it's not that the doctor doesn't want to take care of you. It's that, things are stacking up. And so I have a chapter on how to prepare for your doctor's visit to get the most out of your doctor's visit, because you're a partner in your health. The doctor doesn't sit up on a mountaintop, like some sort of supreme God that knows everything. You got to work with them. So you got to come in with your medical history. You got to come in with a copy of your labs. Why should I waste time trying to find your labs? Just have them for me. You got to have all your imaging studies. You got to have a description of why you're there, right? Say 2 weeks ago, I hurt my back. I was climbing up a ladder. It hurts on the right side, doesn't hurt on the left. This pain started 10 out of 10. Now it's 5 out of 10. I took aspirin and Aleve and Motrin, and I've been doing some exercises. I had something like this happen to me 10 years ago, and I went to a chiropractor, and it took 2 weeks to get better, and I had an MRI, and here's a copy of the MRI. Like, boom, you saved yourself 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And then have a list of questions, right? What are the questions you want answered? Write them down. Hand that to the doctor. You'll get a big smile from your doctor, right? Like in my office, I have a voice dictation system. I just read through, boom, it's in the computer, 3 minutes. Now you got 13 minutes and 14 seconds for the doctor to actually ask you deeper questions, formulate a plan, and then talk to you about, okay, I'm going to put you on Flexeril. Okay, what's Flexeril? What are the side effects? How long should it take for me to get better? 16 minutes is not a lot of time, and health issues are really complex. You can stick a Band-Aid on things, but that's not really going to get to the root of the problem. And the 21st century man has this formula for you to make the most of your doctor visit, to make your doctor your advocate and your partner.
Yeah, and make him earn his paycheck.
Of
while he's
course.
there,
Yeah.
answering the hard question, answering the questions of substance, not all these data things that could have been, like you said, given to him right at the beginning. I love that. If we just stopped now and that was all we gave to the audience, that in of itself has made this conversation one of the most valuable ones that I believe we've had up until this point. So that we
but there's so much more.
So let's dive into that. Let's dive in. Bringing it back to ED, because we started there, and then we kind of went down this off side piece here, which we always do here. Like I told you at the beginning, this is what this conversation is going to be about. But given that we've given guys the freedom to go see their doctor regularly, and we've given them tools to make those visits meaningful, let's talk about what guys should maybe look for, symptom wise, or what are maybe some early signs that maybe you have ED and you need to start looking into this, or is it something you need to just get in front of?
I love you for asking that question, because I'll have something that blows you away.
Yeah.
Okay. When you're 20, did you wake up in the morning with an erection?
That was a long time ago, but probably every day I would.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
Right. And do you know why?
Because I had really good blood flow to the area.
Yeah, but it's your body's way of keeping your penis in shape. Right? You keep your penis in shape through blood flow. Okay, blood flow does two things. One, it brings oxygenated blood and nutrition into the penis. And two, it stretches the penis.
Like a muscular contraction.
Yeah, well, like a muscular contraction, but the inside of the penis, right? There are two cylinders that fill up with blood called the erectile bodies, or the corpora cavernosa. And then there's the urethra tube that also goes through there, right? But the erectile bodies have a really tough, thick lining. So it's called the tunica. And the tunica is a vascular tissue, and it's twice as thick as the aorta. So the aorta is the biggest blood vessel in your body, right? And I've cut open aortas before, so I know exactly how thick those are. And I've cut open corpora of penises before, so I know how thick those are. And the corpora of the penis, believe it or not, is twice as thick as the aorta, because it has to handle really high blood pressures, but also it gets banged around a lot, right? And so if you fracture your penis, then you don't procreate. So Mother Nature selects for penises that have tough tunicas on the corpora, right? And it has to be able to stretch, and you have to have enough blood pressure to be able to stretch it. And so you get these nighttime erections to keep your penis stretched. Like all my guys that are 60s and 70s and 80s, they come in and we talk, and eventually we'll get around to talking about penile length, and their penile length is shorter than it used to be. And it's just because it's not stretching as much, right? So sometime in your 30s or 40s, guys will begin not to get as many nighttime erections. Okay, and that's the first indication that the circulation to the penis isn't what it used to be.
And by nighttime, this is while you're sleeping, or this is waking with morning work?
Well, so if you wake up in the middle of REM sleep, you're going to wake up with an erection, because when you dip into REM sleep, your body gets an erection. That's just the way it works.
Always.
So at night, when you're 20 years old, you get 30 to 60 minutes of erection. So 3 to 6 times at night for 5 or 10 minutes, you'll get blood flow into the penis that creates an erection. Just kind of your body practicing. Because like if you look at an animal out the window, right, they're not always having sex. They only have sex when it's time for procreation. So what about the other 28 days when they're not getting erections? When they're creating shelter, when they're running away from prey, when they're gathering food, all that kind of stuff.
So monitoring.
What keeps it healthy is nighttime erections.
Got it. But monitoring that, you're not going to set up a camera and sleep over the covers naked and go back and watch it like, oh, I got 6 erections last night. You monitor it through monitoring your REM sleep.
Yeah, well, I mean, most guys know when they wake up in the morning if they have morning wood.
Got it. So you can tell this just based upon rising with morning wood. So if you
Yeah,
got it
yeah,
in the
pretty
morning, that
much.
means you've had it over the course of.
Yeah, you got a pea boner or morning wood, whatever you want to call it,
Okay,
morning glory. Uh,
got it.
uh,
So that's what we're looking for as the first early warning sign.
exactly. And if you're not getting it as much, then maybe it's really time to start looking at your diet or how much you're
Okay.
exercising, or are you smoking, or are you drinking too much? All those things that begin to affect circulation. And we have a supplement that I make called Affirm, which is a nitric oxide boosting supplement, which is a natural way to boost circulation also. So I have a lot of my patients taking that, in their 30s or 40s. They're not getting nighttime erections anymore. What's a simple thing to do on top of lifestyle? Lifestyle always comes first.
Yeah. Now, when should guys start maybe being proactive in some of these things? If we know that, 40% of men at 40 are struggling with this, 50%. So it's kind of a natural process that we're going to get there eventually. But, a guy in his 20s, like, does he need to be already kind of concerned with this? Or at what stage do maybe they need to start playing offensive strategies to combat, the natural process of declining? And then what would be some of those early steps that a guy can take?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know them better than I am. I mean, you train athletes day in, day out. I mean, you can't just dog it in your 20s and 30s and then all of a sudden compensate for it in your 40s. I mean, you got to exercise, you got to eat right. The thing is, you can get away with a lot of stuff in your 20s and 30s. I remember in my 20s and 30s, I could go out drinking late at night and partying, whatever. And then they'll wake up the next morning, go to work and still function. At 54, I could never do that. I mean, I don't drink anymore anyway, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it just gets harder and harder to compensate um, for for not doing the right thing as you get older. And the more that you can take care of yourself when you're younger, the better your life will be when you're older. Your future you will thank your current you because of some of the things that you did. I mean, I was a triathlete and I ran cross country and track in college, and I've always taken good care of myself. And because of that, my cardiovascular system is still good.
Got it. So it's just pillars of health, monitoring your nutrition, your sleep, your training, your cardiovascular health, your rest, your recovery, your mindfulness, like just everything.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, the 21st century man is just loaded with information on prevention and early intervention. Even stuff, there's a chapter on stupid things that men do to get themselves put into the emergency room, written by an emergency room physician, right? 90% of eye injuries are preventable. Let me repeat that. 90% of eye injuries are preventable. All you got to do is wear safety goggles, right? So would you rather go to the emergency room, have someone pull something out of your eye because you're using the Sawzall or a bandsaw and you weren't wearing safety goggles and you got a metal shard stuck in your eye? Or would you rather just put some safety goggles on and say, wow, that could have been bad? Or 50% of hand injuries are preventable just by wearing gloves. So, I mean, sometimes just the knowledge that those bad things actually happen is enough for guys to say, okay, let's not be super proud and cavalier and think that it's not going to happen to me. Because statistically, things are going to happen to you. Why tempt fate? Just wear a pair of safety goggles or wear gloves, or, you know, don't drink to excess, or I mean, there's so many things. So I don't mean to go on and on, but sometimes I do. There are a number of themes that run through the book. And to me, one of the most important ones is called The Hero's Journey. And The Hero's Journey is a book by Joseph Campbell. And I encourage all men to think of themselves as the hero of their own journey. Like I'm looking at behind you, and there's a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? I mean, Arnold's an amazing guy, and he's almost a billionaire, and he was governor of California. But you know what? Arnold's got problems. He's got his own issues. If you think of Arnold as your hero, like he knocked up his housekeeper, and she had a kid, and the Maria Shriver found out about the kid and divorced him. And, he's got his own problems. He's not a hero. He's a hero of his own life, but you got to be a hero of your own life. You have a family, you have a wife or kids or, people that you work with or a community, and you can be a hero from them by reading the book, by taking the advice of the people in the book, and always try to do the right thing.
I love that. I absolutely love that take and perspective. And to be honest, interviewing, board certified urologists, I never once imagined that we would get into Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. Because I'm a huge fan of Joseph's work. And I believe that story, that hero's journey is the story of the human experience. We are all have, just like you said, we all have our own journey that we're on, and we have to understand that it is our walk and our journey, and not fall into comparison and look at other people and look at what he did and so. But you can use examples. I mean, you can use the fact that Arnold, was an immigrant from Austria and, pursued this dream of doing that, but don't look at everything that he did in his life. Pull segments and see how can I utilize that, or how can those aspirations inspire me to do something else in my life. That's fascinating.
But the interesting thing is, there was a huge study called the Harvard Longevity Study. They took a group of like a couple hundred guys from Harvard and a couple guys from Southie, one of the lousy neighborhoods in Boston, and they followed them for 75 years. There's a great TED Talk on this. And what they found, they followed these guys and then their kids and their kids' kids, and they followed their health and relationships and everything about them. It's really it's a landmark study. And what they found is the single most important indicator of health and happiness is the quality of your relationships, right? It's not what you eat. It's not what you exercise. It's not what pills you take. It's the quality of your relationships. And so the 21st Century Man covers all of these subjects. They cover physical health as well, or better than anything that's ever been out there. But also, I have a whole section written by therapists. I have a whole section written by psychologists. I have a chapter on divorce written by a divorce attorney. I have a chapter on fatherhood written by Armin Brott, who sold 2 million books on fatherhood. I have a chapter on vitality and work-life balance written by Robert Bonfiglio, who's the president of the California Psychological Association. I have a chapter on anxiety and a chapter on depression written by Brett McLaughlin, who's the dean of Cal North State University in the Department of Psychology. I mean, like I assembled the dream team of men's health professionals in one book, and then I made it super accessible for men to read. Right? It's an active tense. It's not one of those things that it's like a 300-page book, and then at the end of 300 pages, you're like, how come they didn't just summarize this in 5 pages? This is a 900-page plus book, and the least number of pages I could have put it in was 900. But you don't have to read all 900 pages. You just pick and choose the chapters that relate to you.
I was gonna say, is it more written as a reference guide, not something you'd sit and read from start to finish? It's kind of like you got these questions, got these ideas, and here's the answer to all of your men's health questions in 900 pages, and you find them when you need them.
Yeah, I don't like the word reference guide. Because reference guide's like a dictionary or an encyclopedia. This is like, say you have a heart issue, and your next door neighbor just happens to be the top cardiologist at the local hospital. So you go over, while your next door neighbor's mowing the lawn, and you stop and you bring him some chocolate or something like that, and the two of you just hang out for half an hour talking about heart disease, right? This is an advice book from really, these are all my friends. I went to Brown University and Vanderbilt for medical school, and I did research at Harvard, and I trained at UCLA, and then I practiced in a really great medical community in Northern California. And these are like all my buddies that are just giving advice. And that's the way that the chapters read. They're not preachy. They're not judgmental. It's what I find is with men, they just want data. They want the information, and they want the ability to make the decisions on their own. You're never going to tell a guy do this. And 9 times out of 10, he's going to be like, why should I do that? I'm going to give you the information. You're a big boy.
Yes.
Figure it out on your own.
Yes.
If you really want to lose weight, this book tells you how to lose weight. If you want to build muscle, this book tells you how to build muscle. But it's up to you whether you follow through on it or not.
Yeah, it'd be like if I took, we're here at 100, episode 107. It'd be like if I took, these 107 episodes, had them transcribed and edited and put into a book. Here's a guide from 107 of the best experts in the world in all these different areas: urology, neuroscience. We've had some of the leading neuroscientists. We had Dave Asprey, the world's greatest, leading biohacker. Literally, his name is in the definition in the dictionary of biohacking. We've had all these experts. So, but it's not here where we're not preaching and telling you like you need to go do this. It's like, here's some ideas. Here's things that we know that you're interested in. Here's the evidence and research supporting why it works. And if you want to do something with it, here's how to go do about it. But at the end of the day, we're living our life. What are you going to do with yours? You're going to take ownership for it. So I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So going back to broken penises and erectile dysfunction, what is the link between testosterone and ED? Is there any correlation? Because I'm thinking here as the age is, the numbers are going up with age. Obviously, testosterone declines as you age. So is there any correlation between T levels and ED?
So there's actually a weak correlation between testosterone and erectile dysfunction, believe it or not. So testosterone is the male hormone that rises when we go through puberty. So for example, my son, he's 15. So 2 years ago when he was 13, his testosterone was maybe 300. And now he's 15 and a half, and his testosterone probably 1,000. Right.
And he's putting on,
right? Yeah. Oh yeah. So he's putting on muscle like crazy. 2 years ago, I could beat him in a running race. Now he just blows me away. So testosterone helps you build muscle, get rid of fat, increases libido, increases mental energy, focus, concentration, all of those things. And it peaks at around age 20. And every year after that declines about 1%. Okay, so I see a lot of men in their 60s, 70s, 80s with low testosterone. And their testosterone will be 200, 250, 300, 350, somewhere along those lines. And what I can do is I can boost their testosterone back to 1,000. And it's astounding, the benefits of testosterone at that age, right? They can all of a sudden build muscle again. They can take off fat. Their mental energy dramatically improves. Their concentration, their sleep improves. Their overall outlook on life improves. Their libido just, and it's not just libido. It's all about building muscle. If you look at how testosterone decline correlates with strength, there's almost a perfect correlation between a decline in testosterone and decline in strength. So testosterone is really not a function of blood flow to the penis. That's slightly different. But it gives you a reason for blood flowing to the penis and builds muscle, gets rid of fat, et cetera, et cetera. And the chapter in the book is written by Gary Donovitz, who's the founder and chairman of the board of BioT, which is the top testosterone company in the United States. Yeah, like I said, I got all the top experts in the country writing chapters in these books on all these different subjects.
So with the protocol that you're taking these guys through, that's getting them to 1,000, is that through TRT, hormone replacement therapy, or are you using other means? It is. Okay.
No, so testosterone, there are a couple things you can do. Say you have a relatively low testosterone. So for example, and if you're a younger guy and you want to have kids, don't go on testosterone replacement. If you're a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old football player or athlete or a weightlifter, please don't go on testosterone. It'll make you infertile. If you want to have kids, don't go on testosterone therapy. Okay. Now, is that a 100% proven scientific fact? Because I have a lot of friends that are pro bodybuilders, competing at the highest level. That obviously, we don't even need to, we don't want to get into some of what they're taking, but like I know a lot of these men have like in produced children while in their peak of their career. Right. So you can take something called Clomid or HCG. See, there's a negative feedback loop. So if you're making a lot of testosterone, it feeds back to the pituitary and to the brain, and it tells the body to stop producing testosterone. But at the same time it's telling them to stop producing testosterone, it also tells them to stop producing sperm. So there's two hormones. There's LH, luteinizing hormones, and FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, right? And LH tells the testicle to make testosterone. FSH tells the testicle to make sperm. And if you cut off LH and FSH, you'll stop making sperm. But if you take Clomid on top of replacing testosterone, then you continue to stimulate the testicle. But the thing is, a lot of 17, 18-year-old, 20-year-old football players, they're not smart enough to understand that. They're getting it from some shady guy at the gym or whatever. And they're really going to compromise their fertility. And at the end of the day, I mean, I had one patient who was an ex NFL player, was an all pro for 12, 13 years, big guy, 350-pound guy, did his vasectomy, and his testicles were the size of peas, right? Because he'd been taking high levels of testosterone for such a long time because he was making $5-10 million a year playing football. Maybe in that situation, it's worth it. I don't know. But if it's the difference between being a mediocre and a decent high school linebacker, you really got to think twice about if it's worth the risk.
Yeah, I've openly talked about probably some decisions that I made in my 20s and 30s that probably, if I look back, weren't the wisest. And I don't, I get people that ask me, I get young men that approach me in the gym still today, and it's like, don't do it. It's not a healthy route. Obviously, at the end of the day, everybody's their life is their choices. But yeah, we're not advocates of that. We I do believe in the therapeutic side of things. Now, we've had a functional medicine doctor on and talking about some of those things. But what would be a healthy level? Because you kind of threw it out there. Like if you're at a normal healthy level. So what are some ranges where that guys should look at getting?
I mean, it's somewhat age dependent, but I like to keep my guys at least over 500.
Okay.
500 to 800 is pretty reasonable. I make a supplement called Support, which is DHEA, which is a testosterone precursor, DIM, which blocks the aromatization of testosterone. So it blocks conversion of testosterone to estrogen. And then ashwagandha and tonkat ali, which are the only two botanicals that have ever been shown to boost testosterone. So that'll boost testosterone 15%. And that's about the most you can hope for. Any of these other companies that market, like testosterone max, whatever, I mean, it's all advertising.
Yeah, no,
15% is about all you can expect.
Yeah,
beyond that, you got to replace. But there are pros and cons of replacing.
100%. Well, I want to ask you about vasectomies, because you mentioned it there. And one thing I always do is I kind of poll the audience here, and I kind of try to get some ideas of what they're interested in. And one of the things that came up quite a bit was vasectomies. So I'm assuming you've done them. So
I've done 3,000 vasectomies. I love vasectomies.
Okay, so
they're really
them,
fun.
So they're fun, but are they always good? Are they all positive for men? Is there negative side effects? And one of the direct questions that I did have is, does getting a vasectomy decrease T levels?
No. I have a really good video on vasectomies on my website, which is brandeismd.com. So if I made the video after doing 2,500, 3,000 vasectomies. I compiled every single question I've ever been asked about vasectomies and answered all those questions. I explained the anatomy, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're thinking about having a vasectomy or you want information, just go to Brandeis MD and look under vasectomy. I also have a chapter in the book, The 21st Century Man on Vasectomy. But basically, it doesn't affect anything except for the delivery of sperm. Doesn't affect testosterone, doesn't affect sexual function, ejaculation. The sperm is only 10% of your ejaculate, so 90% of the ejaculate is still going to come out because it's all prostate secretions and secretions from the seminal vesicle. You can still have kids because your testicle's still making sperm. It's just that the bridge is blown out. So you can stick a needle into the epididymis, suck out sperm, and have in vitro fertilization or ICSI. So, it should be basically a non-event. I have 4 kids. I've had a vasectomy. When my wife and I were talking about it, she was like, well, did you want to have 5 kids? And I said, in a deck of cards, there are only 4 aces. After that, they're all jokers. So, when it's your time, it's a great thing, because then it's vasectomy means you're never going to have to say, I'm sorry. Kids are a blessing, but too many kids sometimes aren't a blessing.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is it's like there's no real negative side effects, consequences that could come out of it. Are there dangers obviously if you got a stupid doctor, there's obviously a danger in the procedure, but outside of that, it just seems like it's all good. And what I think I'm hearing you say, it's like every guy that should, I don't want to say every guy should get one, but if if you're at the stage in life where you're happy with the family and you've created the amount of kids that you want, it's like there's no reason not to.
Yeah, I mean, close the barn door for God's sake.
Yeah.
There are too many people in the world.
Yeah.
There's not enough water in California. There's not enough food in Africa. Um, I mean, if you're done having kids, it's a great way to have some finality.
Yeah.
And really, there's no. I mean, if you have a bad taxi cab driver, that could end up a lot worse than having a bad doctor. But just make sure that you have someone that knows what they're doing, that's board certified, that does a fair number of vasectomies, and it shouldn't be an issue. A couple days of discomfort, and that's it.
Yeah. Can we talk about muscle building?
Oh yeah, I love muscle building.
So let's get into this. You were sharing with me, at the beginning that you've kind of unlocked this new protocol. So, whatever you're willing to kind of talk about here with, how you're helping men in their 50s, 60s, and 70s pack on muscle. Let's dive into there.
So if you're in your 20s or 30s, don't ask me about muscle building because
ask me.
Yeah, I mean, guys like you are much better at that than I am. Okay, but
learn how to contract muscles, learn your proper macronutrients, and learn to train really, 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 really hard. And when you think you're training hard, find somebody that's going to push you even harder. And that's the formula. But first thing, learn how to actually contract a muscle.
Yeah. But for men over 50, that's not quite the right formula. So first of all, if you want to build muscle over 50, you got to make sure that your testosterone levels are adequate, because I have guys, that have testosterones of 200, 250, 300 that are putting crazy hours in the gym and they don't build muscle.
They're just elevating the cortisol, I would assume.
Yeah. Or, they're just breaking down muscle. Okay. And so you got to know what your testosterone level is. You're not going to build muscle if your testosterone's not high enough. It's the main growth factor for men. Second of all, I pioneered a technology called M-Sculpt, which is using high intensity focused electromagnetic waves to help build muscle. And so I've seen it really accelerates the muscle building process 10 to 15 fold. And so if you're in your 50s or 60s or 70s, especially if you're really busy, I mean, I got it because I run a full-time practice. I have 2 other businesses. I have a wife, I have 4 kids, but I love being in shape. I grew up a triathlete and a track runner, and I love being in shape. And so this was a way for me to be super efficient in terms of getting myself into shape. Okay. The other thing is supplements. So creatine, right? Creatine regenerates ATP. Creatine monohydrate is probably the most studied supplement known to man. It's been around since the beginning of time. When I talk to a lot of my patients about it, they're like, oh yeah, I used to take that 20, 30 years ago. But guess what? You need it even more now than you did back then. And guess what? It also improves cognition, right? Improves brain health, because your brain at baseline is using 20% of your glucose and creating 20% of your ATP. And if you're just sitting around thinking a lot, it could be up to 50%, right? And what does creatine do? It scavenges the phosphate and sticks it back onto ADP to make ATP. So it regenerates your energy. So creatine, and then also I make a nitric oxide boosting supplement called Affirm, right? Nitric oxide is critically important for circulation, not just for penis circulation, but for brain circulation. I'm sure you, Frank, you recommended a nitric oxide booster as a pre-workout stack, right? Boost circulation. It's been shown to improve cycling times in cyclists 1.5%, improve bench press 13 pounds, improve soccer performance 4%, just by taking basically watermelon and beets, right? There are 2 different pathways. There's the citrulline pathway, which is watermelon, and the nitrate pathway, which is beets. Totally natural. I get a lot of my patients I reduce their blood pressure using a nitric oxide booster. It's critically important, right? Those are the 2 supplements. Maintaining adequate hydration, right? You can't build muscle unless you're adequately hydrated. And you can't build muscle unless you get enough protein. So a half of your body weight in grams of protein minimum. So I'll do in-bodies on guys.
0.8 to 1 gram.
Yeah, I mean, at least half. I work in kind of round numbers, because the thing is, like, you're tuning guys up that already are solid, right? You're training athletes that are already bodybuilding and athletic. I'm getting guys in their 50s and 60s that are 30 pounds overweight, don't exercise that much. And I'm trying to get them back to where they were 20, 30 years ago, right? So it's interesting. I had a patient the other day, his upper body was at 120% of norms and his lower body was at 90%, right? And he's 65 years old, and guess what he's doing? He's lifting upper body, but he's not eating enough protein. So his body is saying, well, he's working out the upper body. He does not really using his legs. So let's take muscle, let's take protein from his legs and bring it up to the upper body, right? So that's not what you want to do. It's not a zero-sum game. You don't want to turn it into a zero-sum game. So you got to take in enough protein and aminos so that you can build muscle without breaking down other muscle.
So by him not prioritizing and training his legs and then not having enough protein, literally his body is atrophying his lower body muscles in order to create hypertrophy in the upper body?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
You don't get that when you're younger because, you're hungry all the time and you're able to absorb protein better. Your body's able to make, the endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi apparatus is able to make protein better.
Mm-hmm.
Your mitochondria are much more efficient in producing ATP. Your DNA works a lot better. You're able to create the messages to make the protein better. But, once you've been on this earth for 50 years and eat all the crap that we eat and get exposed to toxicities and radiation and plastics and all that kind of stuff just doesn't work as well. And I'm not, I'm not one of those people that's like focused on this particular plastic or that particular toxin. To be honest, I don't really know that literature, but I know that we're exposed to a whole lot of junk. I mean, I've eaten my fair share of Twinkies and McDonald's and processed food and salami and whatever else. And I'm sure that there's stuff in those things that are causing damage to DNA and causing damage to cells, so that my body's not functioning as well at 54 as it was when I was 20.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm aware of that, and we've addressed it in other conversations on the show here. I drink out of a aluminum glass as much as possible. I use glass versus plastic Tupperware. But I know I'm not 100%. I had a bottle of water the other day, or I have one bottle most every day, so I know it's not 100% perfect, but I'm aware about that. Is there a section in the book on some of those things? I know it said you weren't really well read on that.
Yeah, I'm not really well read on that, and that I look at things from a researcher's perspective because I do a lot of clinical research, and those are really difficult to prove. You're never going to take 1,000 guys that drink out of aluminum and compare them to 1,000 guys that drink out of plastic and follow them for 30 years and then control for diet, control for exercise, control for all of those things. And so as far as I know, the literature is really mostly speculative about those kind of things. And the book really tries to stay away from speculation and really focuses on what are the things that we really know. Western medicine really focuses on data and what are the things that we know. Alternative medicine tends to be a little bit more, fringe isn't the right word, but that they tend to focus on things that maybe are a little bit less critical, essential. I see second opinions of folks that have gone to alternative and naturopathic medicine doctors, and they have these huge panels of labs and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of this times you're not really addressing the 90%. You're focused on the 10%. The 10% is, do you drink out of plastic bottles or aluminum? The 90% is, how much water do you drink? Because your tendons and ligaments get dehydrated as you get older. And guess what? If you're lifting, I talk to my patients about how to lift weights when you're getting older. You should lift less weight, more reps, and you need more time to recover, right? When you're training your younger guys, 18, 24, 36, 48 hours, sometimes you need to recover. If you're older, you need 3-4 days to recover. Just don't, do your pecs twice a week, not 3 times a week, not 4 times a week, and 3 to 5 sets in a session, because you get to a point where you've already maximized your benefit. And if you do too much or too much weight, you're going to cause an injury. And if you cause an injury when you're 20, it'll heal quickly. If you cause an injury when you're 50 or 55 or 60, guess what? It takes a long time.
Yeah, no, it drives me nuts. I see guys in the gym, now I'm somebody at points in my, competitive career, I definitely was, a 90-minute trainer. I'd have super long, very dense workouts, very intense, but we talked about supplementing and, nutrition, sleep, everything was kind of dialed into the point. Me now at the age of 38, my workouts are 45 minutes tops. Like I'm in and out, bam, bam, bam. It's more of a checklist. I just want to make sure I check the box every single day. I'm not really training for muscular growth anymore, more health and longevity. But I'll see guys in the gym that I know are, 15, 20 years my senior. And it's like, dude, you were here when I showed up, and you seem like you're halfway through the workout as I'm leaving. They're spending 2 hours in the gym, but then they can't figure out like why their body hasn't changed in a decade. It's because you're just spinning the wheels. There's so much more to
Well, if it
the
hasn't
growth
changed, it's
process.
actually a success, because the thing is, after 35, you're catabolic.
Mhm.
Up to 30, 35, you're anabolic, you're building. But after that, so between the ages of 40 and 70, you lose 0.8% of your muscle per year. And after 70, you lose 1.5% of your muscle per year. Right. And that's just fact. That's just the aging process. There's nothing you can do about it. That's ideal. Now, if you're 50 and you've already lost a lot of muscle, you can put muscle back on by boosting testosterone, by getting in the gym, by doing supplements, et cetera, eating a lot of protein. But at a certain point, we all end up in the same box under the ground.
Yeah. So I'd be interested to get your take on this. I shared this with a friend of mine. I had this kind of like, I don't want to say it was a revelation a couple of weeks ago, but like I said, I don't spend a lot of time in the gym. I don't really train heavy. I don't really train intense. I maybe take 1-2 sets per week to complete failure. And then everything else is kind of just me squeezing, contracting, kind of just feeling muscles move. But I'm still in what most people describe great shape. I'm nowhere, I'm not at my peak strength, but I was repping out 130 pounds on dumbbells, just yesterday. So I still have a lot of strength. And I know that it's because I spent my 20s and 30s building as much muscle as possible. So if I had the opportunity to speak to a guy in his early 20s right now, and he had, I don't want to say one piece of life advice, but one piece of physical advice in their 20s, I would say build as much muscle as your body can hold in the 20s, because knowing that we're going to lose 0.8% of it per year into their 40s, like you're going to set yourself up to not have this massive fall when you begin to age. So yeah, just I don't know if there was really a question there, but
Yeah, no,
what are your
I couldn't
thoughts
agree
on
with you
that?
more. I mean, I still feel like I'm living on the exercise and the work that I did when I was in my teens and 20s,
Yeah.
that I was able to sort of maintain. And you generate what's called muscle memory,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your muscle fibers align in a certain way so that they contract in unison. Think of like a boat, of crew guys, of rowers, right? You got 8 guys, and if they learn how to row in unison, even if they're not pulling as hard as they used to be able to pull, that boat is going to skim along really fast. But if they're not pulling in unison, doesn't matter how hard they pull, the contraction, the speed of the boat isn't going to be as fast. And so that's one thing. When you're younger, you're really training muscle memory. And what I find is that, especially when I'm putting these guys on the M-Sculpt machine, when they're trying to rebuild muscle after 20 or 30 years, right? So you're in your 20s, you're building a career, then at the late 20s or 30s, you get married, your career takes off, you have kids, so on and so forth, you have a family. Now you're in your mid 50s, the kids are leaving the house, you got a little bit more time again for yourself, you want to get back into shape. The guys that put the work in their 20s, it's so much easier for them to get back into shape. Whereas if you didn't do that work in your 20s, you didn't build that muscle memory, it's really hard. It's possible,
Yeah.
but it takes 2 to 3 times as much effort.
Yeah. So advice to you young guys out there, in the words of Arnold, since we've given him a little bit of credit here. If you guys are hearing this in your 20s, put that cookie down and get in the gym, start building some muscle. Um, Dr. Brandeis, what's the most common question that you get in your practice that we didn't cover today?
Oh gosh, most common question. Probably, what happens when Viagra's not working for me anymore?
Mm.
And so my answer is, first of all, your nitric oxide levels are declining, so you need to take a nitric oxide booster. And second of all, your circulation is failing you. So things like Gainswave shockwave therapy, PRP, using vacuum erection pumps, And then also just lifestyle stuff, exercising, eating better, drinking enough fluids, taking better care of yourself, stretching every day, doing a little bit of meditation, all those things that improve your circulation and improve your overall health.
Yeah, that's great. So are you a proponent of Viagra? Are there times where it's good, or is it always a Band-Aid on a stab wound?
Oh, when I was at UCLA, one of my professors won the Nobel Prize for discovering nitric oxide as a second messenger. And then he and another one of my professors wrote the seminal paper on explaining how PDE5 inhibitors like Viagra work. So I've always been a huge fan of those medications. I think it's just ingenious science. But to a certain extent, they're a Band-Aid. And to a certain extent, it's a warning sign for cardiovascular disease. So the development of erectile dysfunction precedes cardiovascular disease by about 5 or 10 years. So when you start getting nighttime erections, you better take notice and start taking better care of yourself. And when you start striking out in bed, you really better take notice, because 5, 10 years from now, you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke or an angioplasty, right? And if you get that warning and you don't heed it, 25% of men, the first sign of cardiovascular disease is sudden death. I'm not saying that to scare you. That's just statistics.
Wow.
So don't ignore, the good Lord's given you a message. Don't ignore it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So Viagra, Cialis, like what's the difference? And then I have a question about Cialis as a performance, not sexual performance, but once again, being in the world of high level competitive bodybuilding, like I've known a lot of competitive bodybuilders that take Cialis as a pre workout kind of supplement. I think that the vasodilator there so effect. Yeah, what's the difference between Cialis and Viagra, and then what are your thoughts or any research you have on the Cialis as a performance enhancer?
Yeah. So the difference is half-life. So the Viagra, they both get into your system in about 30 minutes. Viagra peaks in an hour, and it's 6 hours. It's 75% out of your system. In 8 hours, it's almost all out of your system. Whereas Cialis or tadalafil, it's in your system in an hour. It peaks at 1 hour. It stays at that peak for about 6 or 8 hours. At 18 hours, it's about 50% in your system. At 36 hours, it's pretty much out of your system, right? So, if you want to have a really good weekend, take the Cialis. If you want to have, a good encounter, then take the Viagra. In terms of workouts, the beauty of these medications is that they're PDE5 inhibitors, and PDE5 only lives in the penis. So if you want vasodilation, you're much better off taking a nitric oxide booster, because that works everywhere, than taking something like tadalafil.
Got it. So these guys that were doing this had no clue what they were talking about.
As far as I know. I haven't tried it before, but
That's fantastic.
I can just tell you what the science would tell you.
No, that's fantastic. I appreciate that. Wow. I'm just looking at the clock. I think we've gotten. Well, we could keep going, but I want to be respectful, obviously, to you and to the audience. This has been a really amazing conversation. So we have one question that we end every single episode here at the end. It's going to kind of take us a little bit different of a direction. But before we get there, Dr. Brandeis, you plug the book. Where can people pick up the book? Where can people learn more about you, your practice, what it is you're doing? And then I guess, like, do you only take patients in person, or if people have questions, virtually, like you see people online? So yeah, plug everything you want, where to pick up the book. And then where to connect with you, and then we'll finish up with the last question.
Yeah. To get the book, go to the 21stcenturyman.com, just all written out, the 21stcenturyman.com. To learn about me, go to my website at Brandeis MD, BRANDEISMD.com. To learn about the nitric oxide boosting supplement, the supplement for testosterone boosting, we have a premature ejaculation supplement, a prostate supplement. Go to affirmscience.com, AFFIRM science.com. And I have a really good YouTube channel, which is Brandeis MD. So I have a bunch of playlists, including the men's sexual medicine curriculum, or I have I think 2-3 hours worth of sequential videos that cover everything from getting erections to orgasm to Peyronie's disease to premature ejaculation, delayed ejaculation, even how cycling can affect erectile function. If you're bicycling more than 3 hours a week, you better have a good seat.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Guys, we'll get all that information plugged down there in the show notes below, the book, the website, the supplements, the YouTube, and I'll also find that TED Talk, if that's easy to find on YouTube, of the Harvard longevity study, and put that down in the show notes
easy
for you guys
super
as well.
Easy.
So, Dr. Brandeis, thank you so much for your time here, your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise on all things, optimizing men's health and optimizing manhood, and really providing us kind of, maybe a framework of what it means to be a 21st century man. So I'm looking forward to grabbing the book and having it here as an answer guide for me. Just everything we've talked about here. I just want to go deeper in so many of these things. But as we bring it home, like I said, we have one question in every single episode with. Obviously, the title of the podcast is The Superhuman Life. The genesis of this has kind of been this own, my own journey that I've been on here for these last few years. But when I talk about living a superhuman life, for me, it's a belief system, or maybe the way that I try to show up in the world every single day. So as a man of faith here, I do believe that we all were created for his purpose. But it's our job to maximize our time here on this earth. And that's done through the physical development. That's due through the personal development. That's due through finding what your purpose is and giving it your all through the service of good to others. So when I talk about it from a, I guess maybe from a more high level perspective, like that's what I define as living a superhuman life. But I'm curious with you, as kind of seeing the world through this lens of sexual performance, or through this lens of, kind of erectile performance, like how would Dr. Brandeis describe living a superhuman life?
Yeah, I think you and I are very much on the same wavelength. The 21st century man really is the cookbook for living a superhuman life, but it's really up to the individual to see their own life as a hero's journey. And when you see your own life as a hero's journey, then every decision that you make really has to be consistent with your own values and the values of things that are going to make you a better person, a better father, a better spouse, a better coworker, a better member of the community. And really that's the thing that I keep trying to drive home to my patients and the people that I talk to on podcasts and out in the public is, just you got to live your best life, and you have to live your life in alignment with your values and in alignment with, what science and the data really say.
Beautiful. Thank you so much once again, Brandeis, for your time here today. Guys, check out the book, Become a 21st Century Man, Become a Superhuman Life. Live, first of all, uncover your hero's journey. Figure out what it is you're here to do in this world, what you need to overcome, and that journey will be a fascinating ride for each one of you. So we appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, guys, if you want to help us continue to grow and support this show, you can help us in one of two ways. First off, if you're listening here on Apple or Spotify, whatever platform, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. But more importantly, if there's a man in your life that needs to hear this conversation, maybe there's somebody that you're thinking about right now that maybe, they're not living the best life right now. They're not really prioritizing their health. Do us a favor and do them the blessing of sharing this conversation with them. But for Dr. Brandeis, Frank Rich, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.